Thank you both for coming to Norway and also Stavanger to share your experience and views on the situation in Palestine. Firstly, I will start with you, Jeff. I remember you were in Stavanger many years ago, and I recall very well that you showed some disturbing pictures of demolition of houses and homes on the West Bank. From then, the situation has turned from bad to worse, very much worse, I think. Can you, and also Issa, of course, develop more concrete on the nature of the massive recent attacks on some of the refugee camps, for example, Jenin, and the practical consequences of the destructions and the displacement of Palestinians?
Well, let me answer that again in the framework of settler colonialism, so we begin to understand. Genocide is built into settler colonialism. I mean, you can't come and take over someone else's country and take their land and displace them and erase them. Because part of settler colonialism, of course, is Zionism's goal, its very purpose, was to transform an Arab country into a Jewish country, to transform Palestine into the land of Israel. So it's not only a matter of displacing the indigenous population, it's a matter of erasing their presence completely from the country, as if they were never there, and we're still living in the biblical land of Israel, or in Judea and Samaria, and so on. So that genocide, both physical and cultural, is built into settler colonialism. Now, how does settler colonialism end successfully? What does Israel want? How would Israel win? By normalization. You take the transformation of the country from Palestine to Israel. You have Israeli settlement all over the country. All the place names are in Hebrew. It's now a Jewish country, right? And then you normalize it. You make that normal. In the public perception, yes, that country on the map as Israel is Israel. And there's no more normalization, erases everything that happened before. And now we start at that level. And that's the danger today, because the normalization process is happening. This is the whole idea of the Abraham Accords, and Saudi Arabia being the last big piece to fall into that. So there's a real danger of normalization. I'm not going to get into that right now. But with Saudi Arabia, MBS said to Blinken, I don't care about the Palestinians, but I have a young generation that does. So even in Saudi Arabia, there's some public opinion. So what they need, what Trump needs, and what MBS needs and the Arab world needs, is industrial quiet. They need some quiet they can't normalize with Israel as long as Gaza is going on. So what Israel is doing, and this is the context to all of this, what's happening in Gaza and in the camps in the northern West Bank, but also, in the settler violence that Issa's experiencing, the settler violence of clearing Area C of Palestinians, that's a part of a pacification campaign. Pacification means suppressing resistance to a point where the people cannot resist anymore. They're pacified. And that's why you have this. There's always been genocide. There's always been attacks. There's always been attempts to erase Palestinians. But it's never gotten to this level of intensive violence, genocidal violence. Why now? Because it's a stage that it's a prerequisite to normalization. First, you have to break Palestinian resistance once and for all, and create that quiet that then allows the normalcy to emerge, and that then allows the Arab world and the international community to recognize Israel as the country that replaced Palestine. And that's why you have this genocidal violence, I think, in Gaza and in the West Bank, because if Israel doesn't break Palestinian resistance, it can't normalize. It can never, it's always open. And our goal is, our task, I think, is to fight the normalization process, to stop it, right? And then to begin to assert a political program, that we think is just and workable. There's a logic, in other words, I'm trying to say there's a logic to it all, and I'm trying to sort of bring you into a framework where you can begin yourselves to understand the logic of what's happening.
I think, Jeff, we agreed to be short in our answers.
I never agreed. I talk until Sarah gets up.
They are all getting up now. What's going on is that in the camps in Jenin, in Tulkarem city camps, in Nablus, they are, destroying houses to make roads within the camp. So the Israeli military vehicles can reach any neighborhood in the camps. We are talking about hundreds of houses being demolished and thousands of houses being affected because of the demolishing of that Palestinian neighborhoods and Palestinian properties. The main issue that people were forced to leave their homes without taking their belonging, without being able to take their anything from the house. And the people in the northern part of West Bank, they suffer a lot. They suffer from the fragmentation, the army operation, the killing of the people. They killed and they ask. We are talking about 1,000 Palestinians were killed in the West Bank since October 7th. Many of them were killed by Israeli settlers. We are talking about more than 1,000 apartments being demolished because of license, in Area C and Area B. I'm not talking about the other political demolition by the Israeli military. Before I came, a few days ago, the Israeli civil administration demolished a Palestinian big building in Area B in Betumar city. So they are going after Palestinian houses, and they do more and more demolition to do ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. The main idea, Smotrich, the Israeli defense, a minister in the defense ministry and responsible about the civil administration, which means they are responsible. He's responsible about us. He's the head of Rakavim. Rakavim, it's an NGO. It's the most famous Israeli settler NGO in Area C. Their main mandate to remove Palestinians from Area C. Remove them. Remove Palestinians from Area C. Now they talk about removing Palestinians from West Bank to Jordan. I'm openly saying those officials. Unfortunately, organizations as Rakavim are welcome here in Norway. They do advocacy in the parliament. They collect money from your money here. Some people give them money. So really, I try to be short, not as Jeff, so you love me. 1,400 attacks since October 7th on Palestinians from the settlers with impunity. The difference between Palestinian violence and Israeli settler terror and violence, any Palestinian does anything, he's killed or in jail. The Israeli settlers, 5 stitches, 3 stitches, my nose was broken. I was beaten all over my body. Me, Issa, okay? My house was attacked many, many times. Not only me, many other Palestinians. Daily attacks now from settlers. I said 1,400 attacks at least documented. Hundreds of Palestinians were injured in the last 18 months. And the Israeli settlers have impunity. And nobody is describing them terrorists and preventing them from coming to here. And even the sanction list of the EU is not proportional to what is going on the ground. So I call here that the parliament, civil society organizations here to work to make it costly for Rakavim and for other settler organizations who are really doing terror toward Palestinian people. So you can do something, to be very honest. The situation is not easy, but people relocate themselves, stay, remain. I want to mention Jimba is a very small a compound Around 50 Palestinian families live in Jimba. It's the end of Masafer Yatta. You know about No Other Land. You know, you would see it No Other Land, the film which we won as Palestinian. We won Oscar this year. Okay, we will win Nobel Prize too, Ingrid. Okay, okay. Jimba was attacked by settlers. It's not random attacks, it's pogroms. You know what pogrom mean? Organized attacks. It used to be against the Jews in the past. We are against. Our cause is clean of anti-Semitism. We believe in equality, you know, here. We all believe in equality here. And no, we don't accept any type of racism here, okay? And Islamophobia and anti-Semitism are kinds of racism. So really, you know, to be very honest, Jimba, very far. They live in the desert without any resources. They struggle to get water. They struggle to get food for themselves and for their animals. The settlers attack the school to destroy it for them because they know what it means, the school for the children and the women. The whole community defended the school. 25 Palestinians, elders and among them children, were arrested by the Israeli police because the community tried to protect the school. They were all released afterward because of, thanks to documentation, the video camera, the most trustful witness, which we use to inform you and even to use it for legal purposes. And they're staying there. They are not leaving. But many other communities unfortunately left. Around 28 communities from Area C, because ABC, you know, in the land was sorted according to the fake peace agreement, Oslo, you know, and somebody from Oslo gave me a prize and told me, Oslo is a city too. Okay? So this is the situation on the ground.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was short, yes?
Yes. It rips my heart that we have to cut you off because we could listen to you for hours and hours, but we have some questions prepared.
Someone's leaving, you know.
No.
Don't leave until we, finish.
With the continued, we have to talk more about the two-state solution and the one-state solution and so on. And with the continued expansion of settlements and the current policies of the Zionist regime, is a two-state solution still a real possibility? Or has it become a way for the US and Western powers to avoid confronting the deeper realities of occupation and apartheid? Jeff, you already talked a bit about it. You've long advocated for a one-state solution, even though it remains largely absent from the international agenda, and especially here in Europe. How do you envision this becoming a reality, and what concrete steps do you believe are needed to advance it? And I know you could have had a 4 or 5 hour lecture about this, but very short, please. And Issa Amro, as a Palestinian living under occupation, what is your perspective on this vision and its potential for justice and equality? Jeff, you can start.
Should I start? 2 minutes.
Wow, this guy is time conscious. Look, again, what I'm trying to do a little bit tonight is to bring us into the logic of settler colonialism, because then we can anticipate, we can explain and anticipate what's happening. We don't need experts to tell us, what's going, and you get it. In a sense. So if you understood, if Arafat had understood, and the Palestinians did understand settler colonialism. The PLO, all its years, was an anti-colonial movement. It was only in 1988 that they switched from an anti-colonial movement to a conflict-based sort of, when they adopted the two-state solution. But they should have known from the very logic of settler colonialism and Zionism that there was never in the cards. There could never be a two-state solution, because the whole purpose of Zionism was to take over all of Palestine, and if anything, Judea, Samaria, and Jerusalem, even more than the Tel Aviv area. So right away, they could have avoided that whole disaster of Oslo and this whole two-state illusion that simply it doesn't go together with the idea of a settler colonial sort of a thing. So we're talking about a one-state solution, again, decolonization. And in fact, where we have to, people are saying, well, that's hard, that's far-fetched. It says two-state is easier to do. That's what you often hear. But we have to understand there already is one state. It isn't like that's something that's going to happen in the future. There is one state today between the river and the sea, the river and the sea. There's only one governmental authority over all of historic Palestine today, the Israeli government. There's only one set of laws, civilian and military laws, that everybody, Issa and I together, live under. There's only one military that controls the borders. So there is one apartheid regime today. So our question is, and I'll end on this, our task is, like South Africa, transforming one apartheid regime that exists today into a democratic state, one democratic state of equal rights for all its citizens, and of course with the return of the refugees. So I think the one state isn't only more just, but the one state fits into the logic of decolonization and leads us to where we have to go.
Direct answers. Who killed the two-state solution was the Israeli right wing by committing the Ibrahim Mosque massacre by Baruch Goldstein and by the assassination of Rabin. And then the international community did nothing. They didn't do any concrete actions to make it possible. I was asked this question by the foreign ministry. I told them, as a Palestinian, I don't see a two-state solution on the ground. And the Israeli government now is working hard to make it impossible for two-state solution. As Jeff said, the reality is one apartheid state from the river to the sea. This is my direct answer. But it was not the Palestinian who refused the two-state solution. And who is refusing the two-state solution are the Israeli government. And there is no political party in Israel is calling for two-state solution or for any peace solution.
Thank you.
I'm afraid that time is running out, but I'll try to, if I could ask you, Issa, a short question. I've been to Hebron a few times, and the first time was just after they closed the market and when they started to inhabit the old city, the settlers. And I've been there a couple of times after that, and I understand that the TIPH group had a certain easement of the situation. Can you shortly describe how the situation has been after they left?
Thank you for the question. How many one knows what is TIPH? Tef. You better. No. There's something very important, okay? TIPH, it's Temporary International Presence in Hebron. It was a UN Security Council resolution. After the Ibrahim Mosque massacre, the international community and the UN decided to establish a neutral observers head by Norway. Norway was the head of the TIPH, TEF. And they wrote more than 40,000 incident reports from 1997 to 2019. And they were dismissed in 2019 in January by Netanyahu government after a huge campaign from the Israeli settlers because they didn't want the neutral observers to document the human rights violations. My main ask, I hope that Ingrid carried it on her shoulder. My main ask was to the foreign ministry. The foreign ministry here in Norway should carry the reports. They documented neutral reports, neutral, amazing documents about the human rights violations. You will find my name maybe hundreds of times. Okay, me. I was documenting everything happening to me from the army and from the settlers to take it to the ICC. So they have a paper, they have something in their hand here. Take these reports and give it to the ICC to make the offenders accountable for what they did and what they are doing to us. This is the way how we do it. Unfortunately, in the foreign ministry, when I raised that, they didn't know what is TIPH2. So it's not only you didn't know. Even the ones who are specialized about this topic, they didn't know. So make them know, put pressure on them, make them act, and make them use what they have in their hands. And they are great reports. After TIBH, a lot changes. TIBH were doing 4 main things. They were bringing many stakeholders from Norway and from Europe, stakeholders, diplomats, parliamentarian, official delegations, and inform them about the apartheid, that segregation and separation in Hebron. They had a lot of humanitarian aid for the Palestinian community to remain and stay and support their sumud. They showed us, we call it protective presence. You know, they were staying and give protective presence to the women, to the children when they go to school, not anymore. And the settlers and the soldiers became wild after they left. 4th thing, which is really important, their amazing documents. It was confidential and we didn't see it, but they sent these reports first to the foreign ministry in Norway and to the other 6 countries, you know, who their countries, and to Palestine and Israel. So they did 4 amazing good work. They left without even saying anything, without informing the public in Norway about what's going on, even without informing the parliament, maybe, you know, about how they were dismissed from Israel and from Palestine, without, you know, fulfilling their obligation of making me feel safe as a Palestinian. They accepted, Norway accepted to be punished by a small country called Israel. Well, who is Israel to punish Norway and dismiss the diplomats from Palestine after the recognition of Palestine as a state? How come Norway accepted that without doing anything as a reaction for this kind of disrespect, first to the Norwegian people and then to the Norwegian government? This is something very important. We should address it to the government now here in Norway, and to the stakeholders and to the politicians.
Good plan. Good plan.
And since we're talking about the Norwegian government, how does it feel knowing that Norway's Minister of Finance can order the oil fund to pull out of Russia, but refuses to do the same with the oil fund's 220 billion Norwegian kroners invested in the Israeli occupation of Gaza, the West Bank, and East Jerusalem? And Issa Amro, if you could speak directly to our current Minister of Finance, what would you say? And keep in mind that your answer might go viral if or when you win the Peace Nobel Prize.
I think I'm going to win the Nobel Peace Prize, me and Jeff, and we will celebrate with Ingrid and with everybody here. I promise you that we will celebrate here first, okay? I tell the finance minister here in Norway, stop acting according to your personal interest, stop following other countries' decision, and act as a Norwegian fighter who fought the fascists in the past, and act according to the Norwegian principles and morals of respecting the international law, and make the oil fund outside Palestine, and don't stay part of the problem and be part of the solution.
Thank you. And Jeff, what would you say to the decision makers and employees in Norwegian public and private companies who have partnerships, agreements, or talks with the Israeli-owned data center company Green Mountain, owned by Israeli Group, a huge contributor to the occupation?
Well, I mean, I agree with what Issa said. You know, my organization, the Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions, has long supported the BDS movement. And I think the BDS movement has become very strong. It's really, in a sense, I think the strongest expression of opposition to these, to what Israel is doing, and it's exposing a lot of this. So, it's a part of the struggle. You know, you have the BDS movement in the economic realm, You've got the legal struggle for, in the ICJ and the ICC and in the UN in terms of human rights and international law. I mean, international law supports Palestinians absolutely. The trouble is it's not enforceable. And what I've been saying in my talks is that it's the political realm. The human rights realm is strong, the BDS movement is strong, the economic realm, but the political realm is very weak. And so we support the other realms, but we're really interested in building the political piece of this to a point where again, the resistance has somewhere to go in terms of the political struggle.
Thank you again. Try to make the question short, at least.
We have two more.
Short questions, short answers.
Yes.
Long questions, long answers.
I'll bring you back on this perspective of settler colonialism. Francesca Albanese, she has expressed that the Israeli actions in Gaza and on the West Bank is, quote, to remove the Palestinians from the occupied Palestinian territories, quote, end. What's your view on that?
In my speech, I described what is the policy, not after the October 7th, before. Their philosophy is that they don't evict you physically from your house. They don't come and take you out. And they were trying to do, to change that by changing the judicial system in Israel. Okay, they wanted to be able to, to remove Palestinians from their private land and private houses. It didn't pass yet, but they may change it. Their main philosophy of the ethnic cleansing from the river to the sea, by the way, not only in Arakib was demolished in Negev maybe 250 times, a small Bedouin Palestinian village, Arakib it's called. You don't feel safe. They make you, as a human being, you don't feel safe about yourself, about your family, about your children, about your wife. How they make you not to feel safe? Army violence and settlers terror. And you don't have any protection. So you decide to leave. No social life. You are completely disconnected, isolated, and no services, no enough electricity, no enough water. And we started having, brain drains that people who could afford to leave, they started leaving Palestine, and no national identity. So they were doing that. After October 7th, they exposed their real intention, and they were started calling about voluntary, immigration of Palestinians. All countries don't want immigrants. I don't want any Palestinians to become a refugee, because we tried again. This is a small story I want to tell you. I hope that the time helps, but I know that they have a lot of questions here. After October 7th, the army came to my house, high army officials. Issa, you are not safe here. Maybe the soldiers will kill you, maybe the settlers, and you are a target. Look what happened to you in October 7th. We advise you to go live somewhere else till the war ends. I told them, yes, I'm very afraid. I was beaten, tortured, ill-treated. Really, I'm afraid. And you have to protect me. And it's a great idea. You want me to leave my house? I'm ready. Rent me a room in Jerusalem or in Tel Aviv to go to live there. They said, no, go to somewhere else. Not to Jerusalem and not to Tel Aviv. I told them Jerusalem and Tel Aviv because they don't want me to go there. They want me to go to somewhere else. And then they were leaving because I said, no, I don't go. I don't leave my house. And one of them was Duruz. I told him, he told me, Issa, why are you not leaving? I told him, because we remember 48. We remember 67. We were asked to leave our houses for a few days, and until now, our people are not able to go back to their homes. So they are trying to use this war to speed up the ethnic cleansing, the transfer of the Palestinians. And Francesca Albanese is a great human rights defender. She's outspoken, and she gives us hope of good leaders who are trying to represent a just cause. Really, they are trying to do that. We counter that. Your help, your support, your protection, your action makes that not possible. So you can make a change with us, and you are making a change. Really, to be very honest, people are sticking into the land more because of the the exposed intentions of the Israeli government to remove the Palestinians from their land, from their homes, and from their cities, and from their communities.
Something to add, Jeff?
You can start to answer the next question, Jeff. You've both paid a high price for what you stand for. Legal threats, physical danger, and yet you're still here. You're still speaking, you're still resisting, even though you've faced systematic attempts to silence you, as you've told us. In a world that continues to push back against truth and justice, what does resistance look like today? I mean, how do you keep your hope alive without letting the weight of the struggle harden you? And finally, for those of us watching from Europe, often feeling helpless or distant, what's your call to us? And how do we hold the line and not lose heart?
And we have 2 minutes, please.
So 1 minute each.
See, I don't believe in short answers. I think, I come here once every 5 years, and there's a lot to say.
I give you my 2 minutes.
I don't think you should have a short answer either. I think there's things that should be said that should be said.
Yeah.
All right, at any rate, look, I can't compare the price I pay to what the price that Issa pays. I'm not even going to pretend that I do that. I don't believe in hope, to tell you the truth. I think hope, I don't want to overstate this, the kind of hope is for losers. Trump didn't hope to be president. Corporations don't hope to run the world. There's organization and there's strategies and there's analysis and there's power, and people build their campaigns, they build their power bases, they take over in a proactive way. They don't hope to do that. The minute we talk about hope, it means that we have nothing else to offer in a way. And sometimes people have said to me, well, from what you're saying, it sounds almost hopeless and helpless, and Israel's so strong, but that's why we call it a struggle. Instead of hope, I talk about struggle. And if something does make me feel hopeless, it's that we're in a struggle without the essential elements that we need. We do not have a political program. We do not have a strong organization. There's a disconnect between all of you here that do wonderful work and the Palestinians in Palestine. There's very little relation. The Palestinians in Palestine, from my point of view, don't know what goes on abroad. Maybe they hear things on social media, but they're not a part of it. Each group abroad has a couple Palestinians they talk to, but most Palestinians aren't involved with that. So there has to be a stronger organization. And there has to be a strategy, a program, organization, and strategy so that we can mobilize all of you. Go beyond protest, go beyond BDS, and go beyond hope to a struggle that really we have a strategy. So it's not the struggle itself that's difficult. It's being in a struggle when you don't have a program and an organization and a strategy. And that's what we have to address.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you both very much for your clarity, your courage, and your, I wrote hope, but your struggle. And this conversation reminds us that peace is not passive. It's an act of resistance, and it's a commitment, and it's still possible. Peace is a choice that people make every day, even in the hardest places. Thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you.
Let's start with a round of questions. And it's going to go in turn, and we will try to be, like Jeff said, we don't like short answers, but unfortunately the time is running. Yes, please. Varsågod. Du kan starta, ja.
My name is Toyne, I'm from a station by the Peace now, and actually a new political party in Norway, Peace and Justice, better than. But my question is to you, very interested to listen to you folks. But the first question is, I was in USA last year, and the US for Peace, a very strong organization in USA, together with Palestinian. In 5th of April, they had a big demonstration in Boston, in USA, 100,000 demonstration. I was wondering, the first question is about how is the peace organization in Palestine or in Israel today? US for Peace, are they very strong? That's the first question. Second question is, the war, I'm very concerned about the war now in Gaza. This is part of USA. They give the money to Israel. I think the last that they give was $8,000 US dollar, and not billion US dollar for fight the war from Trump. So what should Norway do for this, to stop the war? Should they call back the Norwegian ambassador to Norway? Because we are part of this crazy war going on in Gaza, killed so many children and old people there, So my question is, what can we do to stop the war now in Gaza? The second question.
One of the books I wrote, I don't know if it's on the list, is called War Against the People. Israel, the Palestinians, and global pacification. And I think we have to look at what I call global Palestine. Palestine is not a standalone struggle. And certainly, what God, one concept that I've developed is the whole idea of a Palestinian laboratory. I mean, Issa just talked about that, how in Hebron they're used as guinea pigs for the testing of surveillance equipment and AI identification and other sorts of things. But in general, the Palestine, certainly Gaza, has become a laboratory not only for surveillance and AI targeting and so on, but for, I could give you a long list of weapons that have been used for the first time ever in Gaza. Gaza becomes the laboratory, right? And then they're exported to other sorts of places. So I think it's also important, the problem is, I don't know all of you, but I would assume, well, I don't know about Stavanger, but if it was in Oslo, for example, where we had less people, there must be thousands of activists. Where are they? The people that come to our talks are the ones that are interested in Palestine. Where are the women? Where are the third world debt people? Where are the anti-war people? Where are the climate change people? There's 1,000 other issues. We're all siloed. And what Palestine has succeeded in doing, I think, more than the climate change issue, is to bring groups together. There's been that kind of a movement. I don't think we've built on it enough, but at any rate, I think that we have to not only advocate for Palestine and keep the focus on Palestine, of course, but at the same time show how Palestine is a microcosm of what's happening in the world. The Norwegian complicity in the arms trade, how oil feeds into the whole thing. In other words, Palestine is like a microcosm of all these world issues. So it could be used as a way of not only uniting all the different movements and causes of the left, but also of mobilizing them in favor of Palestine. Because by focusing on Palestine and exposing what's happening in Gaza from the point of view of the money and the weaponry and the technology and everything else, they're also advancing their own causes. You see, so I would say that one of the answers is we have to begin better to connect the Palestine issue to all these other issues that the left is promoting.
Do you want to say something, Issa?
Yes, what can be done? You're already doing a lot of good work, but be more unified, be creative, and study what are the pillars of the occupation here and how you can target the pillars here. So the oil fund is one of the examples. There are many other examples. You can do something called strategy estimate and do the assessment how to act and make fighting the occupation and apartheid part of your daily routine. And there are many groups, be engaged with them. It's very important. And let us go over the differences and the division among each other. And in the United States, there are many good groups. And the movement pro-Palestine is growing. to be very honest. There are a lot of people do great work for Palestine. The students in the universities, they gave us an example of how students, they lead the change. And always there is a price. So to be very honest, in Norway, you are leading. And Norway can do a lot. Even they can influence other European countries to do certain actions to make the occupation costly, and do they pull out from Israel, the diplomats? Yes, why not? If they closed the embassy, the Norwegian embassy for Palestinians, the Norwegian embassy should be closed in Tel Aviv as well. You know, the Norwegian, why not? You know, to be very honest, you know, Israel can't punish Norway. Or Norway should not accept to be punished by Israel and stay silent about it, because Norway is doing something according to the international law, and we should support politicians. Something very important. Someone as Ingrid must be supported. We must all work for her to become a hero here. Why? Because she's in the right side of history. We need to support those politicians, not as the other politicians, because she needs your support now. We need your support now, because the right wing and the extremists and who are pro the occupation, they get support. If a newspaper here writes against the Israeli occupation, they get hundreds and thousands of emails complaining about writing about the occupation. But if they write about Palestine, they don't get thank you from thousands and hundreds of thousands of Norwegians who really believe that what they do right. So let's really support the right people and give them our votes, give them our money, give them our resources to win, so other politicians know if they stand with Palestine, they get more votes, not they lose their election campaigns.
Thank you, Issa. We have 3 questions, but good news.
And we have taken the case silence of its racism in our program. Yeah. And what I was wondering about, like a couple of days ago, I saw in the national TV, NRK, that the Palestinian president, Mahmoud Abbas, he said that enough is enough, the solution, like we want just this to end and we want the hostages to be released. And I think this is like a very unfortunate that the Palestinian president has using his voice on the Norwegian national TV to say that this is the main problem, and if the hostages are released, then the situation will be solved. So I was very surprised that the head of the Palestinian people said something.
He's not the head of the Palestinian people.
This talk about the one-state solution that you have so fabulously portrayed, why is like he not promoting this idea? And like, are you having like some kind of contact with him that you can influence him? Because when I hear what he said on the national TV, I was shocked. I was thinking he's not really helping the case at all.
Okay, you know, it's the problem of the national TV. Because there are many Palestinians talking about the occupation, talking about what's going on. They don't put them in the national TV. Okay, this is something else. The other things, Mahmoud Abbas is outdated, okay? And he's not giving the Palestinian the minimum feeling of dignity. And the majority of Palestinians, according to polls, not according to my opinion, 80-something% of Palestinians are calling him to resign. He doesn't represent us anymore. This is about Mahmoud Abbas, and what he said is very wrong. If we remove Hamas and throw them to the sea, will Palestinians have peace? If we bring back the hostages, if me and Jeff stay and live here and do nothing, will we have peace? For sure, no. We are not the problem. The problem is the occupation. The problem is, to be very honest, that they want Israel to be from the river to the river without us. So our president is really, He chose a new vice president who's corrupt, and the majority of Palestinians and the majority of the people in Fatah don't want him. Even in Fatah, his party, they don't want him. Mahmoud Abbas, we are forced that he's our president. And they canceled the election 2021 because of pressure from the Israeli government and from the American administration. So we are calling for election. I was arrested by the Palestinian Authority because I was criticizing him and criticizing the Palestinian corrupt leaders. We work to change them. We work for a reform. We work as Palestinians to make a change even within our leadership. It's not only about the occupation, even about us to correct our leadership. Okay, this is something very important, but it's pity that Norwegian national TV is only quoting him when he says these things. Okay, we need them to show the reality in the ground, to show the truth, that the main problem is the occupation, the main problem is the Israeli supremacy, the Israeli ethnic cleansing, the Israeli apartheid, and the Israeli genocide and oppression toward the Palestinian people. This is the main problem, which we should change.
Roseanne, you have a question?
Yes. So good to see you again. We met earlier today at the university.
Yes.
And first of all, I would like to thank you for your great speeches. I want to ask a question as a continuation for a conversation we've had today early, which I might be like missing out on something. But you're talking about taking this apartheid regime into one democratic state. And I just want to deeply or more understand how is that possible when, for instance, if we're gonna bring historical events, say the Algerian French, when France occupied Algeria, the only solution or the only way France actually pulled back was after it had public backlash and it lost its will and force due to that and because of the costs, etc., etc. But it was like a very bloody occupation and we lost many lives. So my question is, how is that possible? One democratic state, and if I understood correctly, the government is not decided. It's just that we need one democratic state. How is that possible?
Okay. The one democratic state, again, if you're in the logic of settler colonialism, is the only way out. There isn't another way out. Now, there's different conceptions of what that means. And there really has to be, and there isn't yet for all kinds of reasons, more an intra-Palestinian discussion. There have to be the Palestinians themselves, and I cut all the slack to the Palestinians. You know, the suppression is tremendous, including the suppression of the PA that prevents people from coming together. The fractionalization. You know, there's no more PLO, that a political vehicle that holds Palestinians together. So to say Palestinians should sit down with each other and figure out where they're going is easier to say than actually to do. I mean, that's part of the struggle, is even Palestinians being able to meet with each other and to talk political, but that's really necessary. And in fact, there's two, I'll say this quickly, there's two big conceptions of one democratic state. There's a group called the One Democratic State Initiative that actually isn't based so much in Palestine, it's based more abroad. But I think their conception, probably most Palestinians would agree with. And they say, Palestinian liberation means Palestinian liberation, that Palestine becomes Palestine again. And it's called Palestine, and it's a Palestinian, it belongs to the Palestinian people. Now, within that framework, Jews can stay. I mean, Jews get equal rights. Nobody throws them out. But they cannot be a national group. They can only exist as an ethnic or religious group within the Palestinian state. That's the conception, and I would think, Issa can respond after, I think that's what most Palestinians would accept. Our conception in the One Democratic State campaign that's based more in Palestine is that settler colonialism or not, there are two national groups in the country today. And speaking as an anthropologist, a group like Israeli Jews that define themselves as a national group, whether they should be or shouldn't be, that have had already almost 80 years of national sovereignty, are not going to reduce themselves to an ethnic or religious group. It's a colonial legacy that we have to live with. And therefore, we have to work around that. And the only way that we think it would work is if we invent a new country. It might be called Palestine, it might be called something else, a civil democracy that belongs to all its citizens. And then within that civil democracy, you have Palestinian national expression, you know, in every sense, and you have an Israeli national expression as well, but within the framework of a common civil state. And the advantage of that, one of the advantages of that, first of all, is you're not telling people who they are. To try to reduce Israelis to an ethnic or religious minority is a recipe for civil unrest. And that's not exactly the future you want. The other great advantage, and I'll end on this, of our conception is that it creates a new civil society. I mean, you can be Palestinian if you want to be, to one degree or another, or Israeli or whatever, but you can also have the option of just being a part of society. I don't want to be a part. I want to fall in love with who I fall in love with. I want to live with who I want to live with. I want to study with who I want to study. We're all citizens of a common country. And that's a positive, so people have a choice. How much do they want to stay within their ethnic or national or religious background, or how much they want as individuals to integrate into a common civil society? So those are two real conceptions that exist that really have to be discussed much more, and we don't really have the mechanisms right now for doing that.
We have two more questions. I'm not sure who of you wanted to be first. Could you please say yeah?
I just want to say one thing about why they continue to support the two-state solution. It's a form of kind of conflict management. In other words, Norway, no government, I think, wants to expend the political capital you have to do in order to really support the Palestinian cause. The last thing Norway wants is to get in a fight with Trump or get in a fight over. In other words, governments feel that they have more important and bigger interests. And so the two-state solution allows them to say, yes, we're for Palestinian rights. Yes, we want negotiations. Of course, Palestinians deserve a state of their own and so on, but never having to implement that. I think that was the idea of the Oslo process. You had 7 years of negotiations over nothing. And so it's a mechanism for keeping the whole thing going, but letting governments and politicians protect themselves by saying that they're in favor of Palestinian rights, but they don't have to pay any price in order to do that. And the two-state solution really serves those interests. And I think, I don't know if they know better or not, but certainly in terms of a strategy of almost protecting your own government, you're not going to go get into a fight with bigger powers.
Last question or comment, please.
Hello, my name is Eric David. Good evening. Thank you for the work you're doing. I have one question, maybe you can enlighten me, because it's been kind of a tough question. When you have these new Christian fundamentalists, like Charlie Kirk and the YouTubers and back in the States, and when you have these my Muslim brothers and sisters, when they come and confront them, they ask them one question, and this is regarding Hamas. And they ask them, will you deny Hamas? What is your answer to that? Because even I cannot answer that question as a Jewish man. Even I cannot answer that question. So I'm kind of can you enlighten me? Because why do they ask this question? Okay. It's bothering me. Thank you.
First, all people are equal. and the victims can't be judged. This is something very important. And again, you see Hamas is the problem, or they see Hamas is the problem. I said it and I repeat it again, okay? If we remove Hamas and we throw them to the sea, this is the answer. Will Palestinians have peace? No. That's the answer. So Hamas is not the main obstacle for peace. And Hamas is a new party that just founded, 1980 something. And the occupation and the Nakba happened 1948, and the occupation happened 1967. And if it's about Hamas and October 7th, we saw what happened in Gaza. What about what is happening in the West Bank? What is happening to other Palestinians, the Palestinian Christians? Why they are ill-treated and why they are, not practicing their religion as they want, as any normal people. So don't let them trap you and put obstacles in front of your freedom work. Hamas is a small part in the Palestinian society, and if you want to condemn Hamas for their political views and for their what they do, look in Israel what they have. Smotrich and Ben-Gvir. Smotrich gave 150,000 rifles to the Israeli violent settlers who are not accountable for their violence. So why we have to defend ourselves? Why we have to defend groups within our society as Palestinians? Let's tell them the main problem is the occupation. I met Blinken 2021, the former State Department, the US State Department. I told him the US must do presidential waiver to Hamas, as they did to the Houthis, okay? And bring them into PLO. Bring them into PLO and make Palestinians have unity and election. And if they did, we would not have October 7th and Hamas become a political party. But you don't siege people and put them in siege without food, without electricity. Bring the most peaceful cat. I'm not justifying violence. I'm a non-violence activist. Bring the most peaceful cat. Cage that cat with darkness. What will happen to the cat? Will come out as a monster. Okay? So don't answer them. You don't need to answer them, by the way, because whatever you answer them is not important. This is what I tell you all the time. And Palestinian people, we just mentioned the Palestinian president. Okay? The Palestinian people are more holy and more important than a state. You understand me? Human being comes first, and then states comes to do kind of governance for the people. It's not the opposite. Okay, so don't sort this is Hamas, this is Fatah, this is I don't know what. The majority of the Palestinian people are peaceful. The majority of the Palestinians are suffering from the occupation, and the majority of the Palestinians are struggling to remain and stay in Palestine, in their land, with Jeff and other Jewish people. We have history of living Jewish people, Christian people, and Muslim people together. And we are living in 2025. The last thing. We are living in 2025. Faith is private. And everybody should believe that he or she can't enforce their faith, their narrative, their opinion on others. This is the beauty of diversity. This is the strength of diversity. Diversity is an add values to the states. And we want to live together in equality without any kind of racism. And I want to protect all the Jews in the world from politicizing anti-Semitism. This is something very important as Israel do. So don't be trapped. Thank you for this question. It's a very important question. And the problem, and the main problem, is the occupation and the occupiers, and who are supporting the occupation and the occupiers.
With these words.